Welcome, dear viewers, to a world where darkness and mysticism meet in the creepiest forms. Here, in this abandoned corner of the internet, we will delve into the darkest corners of the human imagination. Prepare for awe-inspiring horror, as each of our stories is imbued with sinister secrets that lurk in the darkness of the night. Scary stories that remain beyond your imagination are waiting for you on our channel. Don't forget to turn on the lights, get comfortable and hold on tight, because now we are going into the world of nightmares. Are you ready for it? Then welcome to our scary story. In the quiet, picturesque town of Willowbrook, the Thompson family lived an ordinary life, or so it seemed to their unsuspecting neighbors. Charles and Margaret Thompson, a seemingly perfect couple, were well known for their charitable contributions to the community. Their two children, Emily and Daniel, were exceptional students and active participants in various local clubs and organizations. The Thompsons had the ideal image of a loving, respectable family. Yet, beneath the facade of normalcy, there were unsettling signs that hinted at their family's darker inclinations. It all began with a series of peculiar occurrences that sent shivers down the spines of those who paid close attention. The first inkling of something amiss came to light when old Mrs. Withers, the elderly widow living next door to the Thompsons, mysteriously disappeared one chilly autumn evening. She had been a kind, gentle soul, beloved by everyone in the neighborhood. Her sudden absence left the community in shock, but the Thompsons offered their assistance in searching for her, all the while concealing their cold, calculating smiles. Local law enforcement was baffled by the lack of evidence or leads regarding Mrs. Withers' whereabouts. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Despite their best efforts, the police were left with no choice but to close the case, marking it as yet another unsolved mystery. Over time, more strange incidents began to unfold. Pets started disappearing from the neighborhood, leaving distraught children and worried owners in their wake. The Thompsons, though sympathetic on the surface, seemed strangely unaffected by these losses. Charles and Margaret often provided comforting words and gestures, but those who looked closely could see the glint of satisfaction in their eyes, as if they were reveling in some hidden secret. Emily and Daniel, the children who were held in high regard by their teachers and peers, exhibited unsettling behavior at school. Emily's classmates whispered about her unnerving fascination with masks, which she would draw during class with disturbing attention to detail. She claimed they were merely her artistic expressions, but those who glimpsed her sketchbook couldn't help but feel a creeping sense of dread. Daniel, on the other hand, displayed a penchant for dissecting small animals during biology class. He explained it as an intense curiosity about anatomy, but the cold precision with which he wielded the scalpel and the clinical detachment in his eyes sent shudders through his classmates. The strangest incident occurred one crisp, moonlit night when a local teenager, Jake, went missing after attending a party in the woods near the Thompsons' residence. The last anyone had seen of Jake, he had been heading in the direction of the Thompsons' property. Rumors began to circulate, insinuating that the Thompsons were somehow involved in his disappearance. The whispers grew louder, and unease settled over Willowbrook like a thick fog. The once beloved Thompson family was now regarded with suspicion and fear. It was as if the dark roots of their family tree had finally started to emerge from the shadows, revealing a malevolent secret that threatened to consume them all. As the days grew shorter and winter approached, the town of Willowbrook braced itself for a chilling revelation. The Thompsons' seemingly ordinary life concealed a twisted darkness that was slowly but surely clawing its way to the surface. In the depths of their suburban paradise, something sinister lurked, and the people of Willowbrook couldn't help but wonder how deep the roots of evil truly ran within the heart of their once respected neighbors. Little did they know that this was only the beginning of a nightmare that would unravel the very fabric of their seemingly peaceful town. In the dead of night, when the world was shrouded in darkness, the Thompson family emerged from the shadows as malevolent hunters. The facade of normalcy crumbled, revealing the gruesome truth of their existence. This chapter delves into the first horrifying crime committed by this family of monsters, exposing their terrifying methods of murder and the grotesque process of creating masks from the faces of their victims. The unsuspecting victims were chosen meticulously, their fates sealed in the twisted minds of the Thompsons. They had devised a sadistic ritual, a deranged dance that blended sadism with obsession. Their unsuspecting prey became the canvas upon which they painted their ghastly masterpiece. On a chilly winter evening, when the moon was hidden behind a veil of clouds and the winds whispered tales of impending doom, the Thompsons set their plan into motion. They selected their target, a lonely drifter who had recently passed through Willowbrook. His solitude made him an easy prey, a man whose disappearance would likely go unnoticed. The family patriarch, Charles, was the orchestrator of this macabre act. He had carefully scouted the drifter's movements, learning his routines and weaknesses. The plan was simple, yet horrifyingly effective. Charles would lure the drifter into their home, where the true horror would unfold. Their house, a seemingly ordinary suburban residence, hid a dark secret within its walls. The basement was a chamber of horrors, a place where unspeakable acts were carried out. It was a clandestine workshop where the family created their grotesque masks, twisted reflections of the victims' visages. As the night descended further into darkness, Charles approached the drifter, feigning hospitality and offering him shelter from the biting cold. He knew the drifter would be cautious, but desperation and exhaustion had clouded his judgment. With a sly grin and an air of false sincerity, Charles convinced the drifter to accompany him home. Once inside the seemingly benign abode, the drifter's fate was sealed. The family's plan spiraled into motion. In the dimly lit basement, Emily and Daniel eagerly awaited their father's signal. Their faces were contorted with a sickening blend of excitement and madness, for they had grown accustomed to this grotesque ritual. Charles led the drifter down into the cold, damp cellar, where the stench of decay and fear hung in the air like a thick fog. The drifter hesitated, sensing that something was terribly wrong. However, it was too late. The trap had been set, and escape was impossible. As the horrific ritual commenced, the drifter's pleas for mercy fell on deaf ears. The family reveled in his torment, relishing the terror that painted his face. Emily, with an eerie calmness, began sketching the contours of his face as the life drained from his eyes. Daniel, wielding the tools of this grotesque artistry, meticulously peeled the skin from the drifter's face, careful not to damage it. The grotesque display of sadism unfolded, a dance of madness and malevolence. In the midst of this grotesque act, Margaret watched with a chilling detachment. She was the matriarch of this abhorrent family, her eyes devoid of humanity, and her heart devoid of remorse. She had orchestrated countless horrors alongside her husband and children. As the drifter's screams echoed through the basement, Charles stood as the conductor of this macabre symphony, orchestrating the mayhem. Once the grisly task was complete, they adorned their masks, twisted grins frozen forever in a grotesque rictus of agony. Their grisly trophies were hung on display, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked within this seemingly ordinary family. The room was a sickening gallery, a shrine to their sadistic desires. This night marked the beginning of a reign of terror that would haunt the town of Willowbrook, a descent into a nightmare from which there would be no awakening. The Thompsons, driven by their insatiable lust for blood and their sick fascination with masks, had crossed a line from which there was no return. The hunter had become the hunted, and the darkness had claimed them. As the malevolent grip of the Thompson family's reign of terror tightened on Willowbrook, Detective David Harris found himself thrust into the heart of darkness. This chapter unravels the story of the detective's relentless pursuit to expose the series of heinous murders, uncover the family's hidden underground chambers, and grasp the horrifying extent of the evils he faced. Detective Harris was a seasoned investigator, hardened by years of dealing with the worst aspects of humanity. Yet, the horrors he uncovered in Willowbrook tested the very limits of his endurance. The disappearance of the drifter, Jake, and the disturbing pattern of missing pets had set off alarm bells, and he had taken it upon himself to unravel the mysteries shrouding the town. The chilling trail of evidence led Detective Harris to the seemingly tranquil neighborhood where the Thompson family resided. The facade of normalcy did little to ease the growing unease within him. Armed with a search warrant, he arrived at their doorstep, ready to delve into the secrets that lay hidden behind closed doors. Upon entering the Thompsons' residence, the stench of decay hit him like a physical force. He cautiously ventured further, finding himself in the basement, a chamber of nightmares. The walls adorned with grotesque masks made from human faces sent shivers down his spine. The horrors that unfolded before his eyes were beyond comprehension. The lifeless eyes of the victims seemed to follow him, accusing him for not stopping this sooner. The meticulous records of their gruesome deeds were scattered across the room, each piece of evidence a damning testimony to their depravity. As Detective Harris delved deeper into the hidden catacombs beneath the house, he stumbled upon a ghastly sight, the secret lair where the family had committed their atrocities. The walls were adorned with images of their victims, a chilling testament to their madness. Instruments of torture and butchery were strewn across the floor, caked with dried blood. With a mix of horror and determination, he began to piece together the timeline of their crimes. It was a horrifying puzzle that exposed the depth of the family's malevolence. Their madness seemed to know no bounds, and he knew he had to put an end to it. While Detective Harris battled the grotesque reality within the Thompsons' abode, the surviving victims, now trapped in the clutches of this diabolical family, devised a desperate plan for escape. Sarah, one of the few who had managed to survive the unspeakable acts, had witnessed the murder of her boyfriend, Jake, and had been held captive since. Sarah had kept her wits about her, studying her captors and the layout of their underground hell. She realized that their captors were preparing for another macabre act. As the Thompsons prepared for their next victim, Sarah saw an opportunity. She whispered a desperate plan to the others, her voice barely more than a breath, as they huddled together, hoping to find freedom amidst the impending horror. The family's malevolent ritual began anew, the victims selected and led down into the hellish abyss. The Thompsons, lost in their sadistic delight, failed to notice the subtle movements of their captives. Sarah and the others seized this moment, overpowering their weak-knit captors and making a desperate bid for freedom. The ensuing struggle was a chaotic frenzy, a fight for survival. Sarah and her fellow captives fought with a ferocity born of desperation, clashing against the sadistic family. In the pandemonium, they managed to overpower Charles and Margaret, subduing them long enough to flee the catacombs and reach the outside world. Their screams echoed through the night, alerting Detective Harris to their plight. He rushed to their aid, and together they subdued the family, bringing an end to their reign of terror. The town of Willowbrook was free from the clutches of the monstrous Thompsons, but the scars of their atrocities would forever mar the souls of those who had witnessed their malevolence. As dawn broke, Willowbrook began to heal. The nightmare was over, but the darkness that had tainted the town would linger in the collective memory, a reminder that evil could reside even in the most unsuspecting places. Detective Harris vowed to bring justice to the victims and ensure that the Thompsons faced the consequences of their unspeakable acts. The battle against darkness was far from over, but Willowbrook had taken its first step towards healing and redemption. In the chilling culmination of this harrowing tale, the tension escalated to a fever pitch. This final chapter unfurls the shocking secrets and the magnitude of horrors that engulfed both the Thompson family and their unfortunate victims. As the narrative hurtles towards its climax, the confrontation with the maniacs and the quest for justice come to a head. The sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the town of Willowbrook in an eerie twilight. Detective David Harris stood on the threshold of the Thompsons' house of horrors, where darkness and malevolence had once held sway. He felt a shiver crawl down his spine, an intuition that this night would be like no other. Inside the house, the Thompsons awaited their fate. Captured and restrained, their eyes still bore a twisted fanaticism, unrepentant for the horrors they had inflicted. The weight of their sins pressed heavily upon their souls, leaving them hollow and desolate. Detective Harris began the grueling process of interrogating them, seeking to unravel the depths of their depravity and bring them to justice. Margaret, the matriarch of the family, showed no remorse, her eyes vacant and devoid of humanity. Charles, though restrained, exuded a vile arrogance, a belief that their actions were justified by some perverse moral compass. The detective probed their minds, peeling back the layers of their twisted psyches. He learned of their family's descent into madness, tracing it back to an inherited psychosis that festered through generations. Their sickening rituals were born from a deranged sense of duty to some abhorrent family legacy. As the interrogation continued, the surviving victims recounted their ordeals. Each tale was a gruesome testimony to the depths of human cruelty, leaving Detective Harris stunned and horrified. The family's spree of sadism had left an indelible mark on the town, a scar that would take generations to heal. In the darkest corners of the underground chambers, the truth about the masks came to light. Emily and Daniel had reveled in the grotesque art of creating these monstrous visages. The masks were a vile celebration of their power, a means to immortalize their victims in a twisted semblance of life. Among the remnants of their abominable crafts, the detective discovered a chilling revelation, a hidden chamber containing preserved faces, a macabre collection that spanned years. The sheer scale of their malevolence sent shivers down his spine, reaffirming the necessity of delivering justice. Determined to see this nightmare through to its conclusion, Detective Harris presented the evidence to the legal system. The trial that followed was a grim spectacle, exposing the heinous acts of the Thompson family to the world. The weight of their guilt was undeniable, and the gavel of justice fell with a resounding finality. As the chapter closed on their sordid tale, Willowbrook began the long process of recovery. The scars of the past would remain, but the town vowed to stand united against the shadows that lurked within their midst. The Thompsons had been vanquished, but the horror they wrought would forever linger in the memories of those who had endured their malevolence. The sun rose on a new day, bringing with it a flicker of hope. Willowbrook had survived the darkness, and the community would rebuild. But the blood-stained legacy of the Thompson family would forever serve as a somber reminder that evil could wear a familiar face, lurking just beneath the surface.